Pickle. Let's start with some headlines from across the state of Texas. And first, it came down Thursday. We're going to be joined by him in just a minute. But the UIL has a new athletic director. Ray Zepeda will be the new athletic director of the UIL after a search to replace Dr. Susan Elza, who went to join the staff at Nebraska under Coach Matt Rule. But they have found Ray Zepeda, the athletic director of Cy-Fair ISD, to become their new athletic director. He's been there since 2016, been the head of them for then. He'd been in coaching and administration for a hot minute, for 30 years, I believe. He's a former head coach at Mathis, actually, if you want to go back in his coaching career before he got into administration. He is I think that we'll talk with Coach Zepeda. He hasn't been a coach in a minute, but we'll talk with him here in a minute. But he is a guy who is, I think that obviously the UIL is a big organization. So Cy-Fair ISD. They've got 13 high schools. And so if you're talking about a guy who has experience in the big kind of dealing with big organizations, he certainly got that. And he is a Texas A&M grad. He's a Corpus Christi Flower Bluff grad, and he will be in charge of the UIL from the athletic department perspective. So, big news coming from the UIL from Manor Road last week that Ray Zepeda will be the new athletic director of the UIL. We will talk with him coming up here in just a minute. So stay tuned with that. Pickle, it was a big spring game weekend in the college football ranks.
It was.
And I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. I encourage you to subscribe to the Republican Football feed. I bet all of those guys and gals will be having their recap of their own spring game. Plus, the Republican Football will probably have a lot on that when Ish and Craven and Mallory link up next. But if there was a headline to come out of there, because I think spring games are grain of salt a little bit, right?
Yep.
There's not usually. I think we're kind of looking for meaning.
Yeah.
We're like,
it's the same thing that we always say come at the end of the season of like how much stock do you actually put into a bowl game?
Yes.
You know, it's the same kind of thing. It's great, but
if there is a headline to come out of it from the state of Texas, it came from Austin, where Steve Sarkisian, after their spring game, came out and said, "Hey, we got a starting quarterback, and it's Quinn Ewers." The quote was, "I thought Quinn was really efficient today. I think it's pretty clear to say that Quinn's our starting quarterback, and we feel very good about that," end quote. So that obviously means that it won't be Arch Manning. It won't be Malik Murphy. There's going to be now a battle for that backup spot between Murphy and Manning for the backup spot. I think this is... Okay. Obviously, he wouldn't say this just to say it.
Right.
He wouldn't say this just to do, if he didn't feel like Quinn Ewers was going to be the guy.
Yeah, the backlash would have been too much to just throw something like that out there.
I also think this is a very savvy move by him, because otherwise, if he didn't name a starter and we went through the entire summer, all it would be was who's going to be the quarterback.
Start?
It's going to be quarterback controversy. This is Steve Sarkisian, I think, smartly nipping it in the bud and saying, nope, we have our guy. We can talk about the backup competition if you guys want, but that is much less sexy, right? I think this is an intentional move that, obviously, if Quinn Ewers had gone out there and gone 0 for 23 and throws 6 picks, this would have been a different conversation. But I think Steve Sarkisian went in thinking that Quinn Ewers was the guy, and all he needed to do was not implode in the spring game. He didn't. He went 16 of 23, 195 yards and a touchdown. I think this is a pretty savvy move by Sarkisian to just quiet everything down and be like, we're going to have a boring ass summer, a boring off season, because we're not going to have I'm not going to get talked. We're not going to talk about all the time. Who's your starter? Who's your starter? Who's your starter? We've got a starter. It's Quinn Ewers. You could quit talking about it.
And guess what? He reserves the right to change his mind at any point in time. He doesn't have to be married to that, but it nulls it out, because we talked about that with the way that Jimbo answered who's going to call the plays. Yeah. Now, the only thing that anyone can talk about is who's going to call the plays.
You're exactly right. That's a great comparison.
When it's like you could have just lied.
Just go out there and be like, Bobby Petrino's going to call the plays.
Yeah, or we hired him for a reason, didn't we?
We hired him to call the plays.
Done.
That's it. He's going to call the plays. That's it. That's all you have to do. This is, to me, Sarkisian, this is a smart move to just be like, nope, he's our starting quarterback, end of story, go find another story to write about.
Yep.
Because with the Arch Manning hype, and especially with Malik Murphy looking pretty good in the spring game, there's always going to be those questions. Now you don't have to deal with those. So, Quinn Ewers named the starting quarterback at Texas. To the high school ranks, but we will start with I'm sorry, we've got this. You're right. The NCAA, we talked about this with Greg Powers, our recruiting analyst, on Wednesday. But the NCAA officially approved those changes to the recruiting calendar, essentially shifting it so that you can now get contacted at the end of your sophomore year instead of the beginning of your junior year. That's the big one. And then also moving around dates and things like that. So those have become official. They were in front of their committee, and now they moved to the full vote. They got the approval.
Yeah, that didn't take long at all,
no,
surprisingly.
They moved relatively quickly, I think, because they wanted to get this in before
those dates rolled around.
This recruiting cycle.
Right.
And so now they're like, all right, now you've got 6 weeks to plan for June 1.
Yeah.
Of when you can start contacting guys who just finished their sophomore year. So those changes to the recruiting calendar have been approved by the NCAA. Now to the high school ranks.
Yeah,
and this is a high school college hybrid, so it's a nice little segue.
It is.
SMU has been looking for a position on their staff for a director of scouting and high school relations, and they have found it in a local guy, James Brown. The head coach at Mansfield Timberview is stepping down to join Rhett Lashley's staff there as the director of scouting and high school relations. Our friend Alex Brown, I believe, is now their general manager, is what they're calling him. Like he's in charge, director of player personnel,
right?
And like running the roster construction. And so James Brown from Mansfield Timberview is going to become their director of scouting and high school relations, I believe, reporting to Alex Brown there at SMU. He's a guy who has been very successful there. He's 113-80. Most recently at Timberview, he's 79-50. Last year was exceptional, making it all the way to the regional final. This is a guy who is an El Paso guy. He went to Andrews High School. He played under Alan Sepkowitz there. He played at UTEP before then, and before he wrapped up after his career wrapped up there at Andrews. So a big move there. Mansfield Timberview is open as SMU has hired James Brown to be their next high school relations director of high school relations and scouting there at SMU. Elsewhere, staying in the DFW Metroplex, Clear Lake is looking for a head coach. Now, that's not in the Metroplex, but where he's going is he's going to be the new offensive coordinator at Allen, as Coach Lee Wigginton has hired Larry McCray, the head coach at Clear Lake, to become the next offensive coordinator there at Allen. He's a guy who has been there at Clear Lake for 7 seasons. Best years back in 2017 when he led them to an 8-4 mark, led them to the area playoffs twice. A well-respected coach there in the Houston area, making the move up to the DFW to become the offensive coordinator at Allen. Larry McCray will be the next offensive coordinator at Allen. Up at Texoma land, a little surprising here, especially considering the timing here. But Sherman is looking for a head coach. Corey Kane is going to be the next head coach, or is going to stepping down. He's resigning after just 2 seasons. You may remember he was their defensive coordinator at Allen before he took the job there at Sherman. Went 8-12 overall in those 2 seasons there. He is going to finish out the school year. He's their assistant athletic director. He'll finish out the school year. Interested to see where he moves. But this is a pretty big situation here at Sherman. This will be a big hire here. Matt Stepp notes on TexasFootball.com that they've made some big facility upgrades there on campus there at Sherman. They have a bond issue coming up for a new on-campus football stadium. And furthermore, there's a chance they move up to 6A in the next realignment. So this is a big hire coming up here for Sherman. So keep an eye on that as we will as Sherman looking for a new head coach here, and as Corey Kane has stepped down after 2 seasons. Denton Braswell has. No, I'm sorry. You're right. That's the one I'm doing. Fort Bend Dulles has made a hire. Fort Bend Dulles has gone to the Houston area to find their next head coach as Bill Gary. Bill Gary, who was most recently the quarterbacks coach at Katy 7 Links, will be the next head coach there at Fort Bend Dulles. He's replacing Shane Bird, who is moved into private enterprise, I believe, with his family business down there in the Brazos Valley. And so Gary is a guy who's a 30-year veteran of coaching. He was the offensive coordinator at Fort Bend Clements and Fort Bend Ridgepoint. He's been at the staff at KD7 Lakes for the past 3 seasons. He is a native of Plano, so this is so he's down there in the Houston area. We will see what happens there. But Fort Bend Dulles has hired KD7 Lakes assistant Bill Gary to be their next head coach. Now we can talk about Denton Braswell. Then Braswell has made a hire. They've hired Kent Laster from Waco University to be their next head coach. Cody Moore stepped down to become the offensive coordinator at Rockwall Heath. And Kent Laster has spent the last 2 seasons at Waco University. This is a Waco University program that I think put together one of the best turnarounds in the state last year.
Oh, by far.
He took over a program. He was there for 2 seasons. 2021, they went 0-10. 2022, 6-6, first playoff appearance and first playoff win since 2009.
Yeah, it was huge.
And furthermore, 4 of their losses, they went 6-6. 4 of those losses came by combined 6 points. They were in every game,
and they weren't to easy opponents either.
No, Waco U has been a program that has been a bit of a doormat for a while. I hate to say since LaDainian Tomlinson left, but kind of. And to get them to the playoffs is a remarkable turnaround for Kent Laster and company. And now he's going to be the next head coach there at Denton Braswell.
Well, and I think that was especially highlighted just because of all of the success that we have seen out of other programs located in the same area. Like, it made it seem like Waco U was doing even worse. 0-10 is one thing, but even worse than they actually were because of all the success that we've seen out of the Waco area down there.
100%. Let's go to back up the DFW Metroplex. Grapevine has made a hire. They've hired Bob DeBessie to be their next head coach. He's being promoted from the offensive coordinator position. That name may ring a bell if you were a
Bobcat fan.
He was the head coach at Southwest Texas State, then to Southwest Texas State, from 1997 to 2002. And he's bounced around a little bit since then. He spent 2 seasons at A&M Consolidated, but he's been for the last 2 years he's been the offensive coordinator there at Grapevine under Mike Alexander. Mike Alexander leaves to go take the job at Flower Mound Marcus. They've promoted from within. Bob DeBessie, the offensive coordinator, is going to be the next head coach there at Grapevine, former Southwest Texas Bobcats head coach. Go Bobs, SWT. Out west.
Way out
west.
Which is ironic because it's East.
Correct.
Lind.
Eastland has moved quickly. Their head coach, James Morton, is stepping down. He's been in the coaching game for 31 years. He spent the last 7 as the head coach there at Eastland, going 51-33, 6 playoff appearances in those 7 seasons.
Unbelievable offenses.
He was probably, if you know that name, their best year was in 2020 when they made it to the regional finals. With a guy named Baron Morton as their head coach, who's now, or as their quarterback rather, who's now at Texas Tech. They moved very quickly and promoted their offensive coordinator, Bobby Schumann, or rather an assistant, Bobby Schumann, to be their next head coach. So they promoted Bobby Schumann. James Morton is staying there. This is reported by our friend Evan Wren at BigCountryPreps.com. He is staying there for an athletic director only role, but Bobby Schumann will be the next head football coach rather, at Eastland. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Elsewhere, let's go to Mineral Wells. Seth Hobbs, their head coach and athletic director, has resigned. He's been there for the last 2 seasons, going 8-13 in that span, and they very quickly named their defensive coordinator, Clint Clayton, to be their interim head coach. They're going to post the job. He'll oversee it for the time being, Clint Clayton, their defensive coordinator. I would have to imagine he'll be on the short list of guys, especially as we get later and later in here, in the offseason.
That he just has to formally apply.
Head football coach.
Yeah.
But we'll see. For now, he's going to take over the role that Seth Hobbs was filling in the offseason. They will post the job, and they will see the field applicants. But for now, the defensive coordinator is their interim in Clint Clayton, as Mineral Wells has come open. Finally, Pickle, let's go out to El Paso. Speaking of promotions, Bernardo Luna has been promoted from his defense coordinator spot to be the next head coach at El Paso Burgess. Neil Routledge was promoted from to El Paso ISD assistant athletic director, and Luna, who's a McAllen guy, is going to be their next head coach. He played college football at Alpine in Alpine at Sul Ross State. He was position coach at PSJ North before he moved to El Paso to become the defense coordinator at El Paso Jefferson. Then moved over to Burgess. He's been on their staff since 2015. Now it's going to be the next head coach there for the Mustangs, as El Paso Burgess has promoted their defensive coordinator, Bernardo Luna. So that is all the news that's fit to print. You can find all the latest news and notes on TexasFootball.com. Hey, thanks for watching this clip here on YouTube. If you like this kind of stuff and you want more of it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, you can watch us live every weekday at noon at TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, or here on YouTube. And if you want more of the best coverage of football in the state of Texas, check out TexasFootball.com and become a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider at TexasFootball.com/subscribe.